A side, B side, what side are you on?
Well, hello. I sound a little bit more normal this week.
I like it.
Hello.
We're starting every episode now as if we are Mrs. Doubtfire.
I hope that's not copyrighted. Hello.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that I've done that have probably copyrighted.
So. We're back for another episode of A Side, B Side podcast. I don't know what's going on, if I've seen anything. Oh. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, you are a big fan of Emma Thompson. Am I correct?
I love Emma Thompson, yes. I've not seen the newest one on Apple Plus. I've gotten close to starting it a couple times and I haven't done it yet.
So she also has something on Hulu called...
Maybe it's on Hulu.
Oh, okay, maybe that's the one you're thinking of. Good Luck to You,
yes.
Leo Grant. Yes.
Yeah.
And I watched it. It is phenomenal. So it's Emma Thompson and then her co-star, because it's the only 90% of the movie is just the two of them.
Yeah.
And her co-star is actually a young man from Peaky Blinders. His name is Daryl McCormick. And
okay.
He holds his own, and I can't imagine the pressure he must have felt acting next to Emma Thompson, but he really does a good job. And like I said, 90% of the movie is the two of them. They have to carry this entire script, just the two of them, and it is phenomenal.
And something like that can either be so good because the actors feed off each other and it just gets better, and it's this, awesome supportive space where everybody is just working together well, or it can just do, for some reason, the two actors do not get along. Then now you're living hell.
Mm-hmm. I kept hearing how good this movie was, and then I kept seeing it pop up on my Hulu, and I was like, whatever, fine, because I really do like her, and I think she's phenomenal. I didn't recognize him at first until I looked at the cast, and I was like, oh, he's on Peaky Blinders. But man,
he's probably
really...
wearing more clothes in Peaky Blinders.
So it's basically like a 55. This is the synopsis of it. A 55-year-old widow is yearning for some adventure and human connection, and that's all I'll tell you. But it's really good. It's really good.
They were pushing it like on ads and stuff like 4 or 5, maybe 6 months ago, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch that. And then I missed when it actually came out. And then it's each time I see it, I'm usually looking for something else, and I'm like in the mind of watching a Bond movie, or I think it has to be the right timing and the right mood to watch. Mm-hmm. So, and I just haven't hit it yet. So yeah. I think it would be more fun. It'd be like a fun date type movie, right?
It could be, maybe not a first date.
Well, no, but like date night. Like, okay, We're putting the kids to bed. We're going to watch something that's interesting. Maybe spark some conversation.
Absolutely. It will definitely spark conversation for sure. So I recommend it. I think that might be the only like movie I've watched. I've been watching, of course, Blackbird still. Only Murders in the Building. And I've got a hot take. As much as I love Only Murders in the Building, not such a huge Selena Gomez fan. I feel like she's just not the best actress. Yeah, I know, hot take, but I just don't think she's the best actress. I think she's kind of monotone. Like she'll be delivering a line and she'll go, I don't know, Oliver, why do you have the murder weapon? And it's like,
I also wonder if that's like just a poor character choice, because she's supposed to be like the disaffected, like Steve Martin and Martin Short are much more manic, and like they play like the bigger character. Like, so she's kind of the straight person, like the one who like the one who's not over the top overacting, but like it goes too far the other way,
Yeah.
Like she's trying to play it so straight, so they, so that'll be a contrast, and then, but she's just giving nothing. Because I kind of felt that in the first season too, but I was going through and it's like, I don't like how this character is written.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't blame it on her because I mean, I've seen her in other stuff and definitely has more life and passion. It just that it feels really, like you said, just very.
Extremely. And it's like, you're in the middle of a murder case of which you're accused. Like, get some
Yeah.
emotion, chick.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I
I
think
mean, and it could maybe it's the character's self defense mechanism is that like when somebody gets loud, you get quiet.
yeah. Yeah. It could
Because
be.
it can kind of go the other way. I mean, I'm not saying that I think that's what it is, but I kind of felt the same thing in the first season where I was just like, I don't feel like there's a energy void over there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm glad I'm not alone in that. So thank you for that. Because I was like, I'm just not like, I love the show. The show itself is great. Of course, it's campy, which it's supposed to be. It is camp galore. But yeah, it's just she's giving me real boring vibes.
Yeah. And maybe, and you're how far are you through for the second season?
Up until last night's episode.
Okay. So I mean, maybe they're setting up a twist or something.
Maybe we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I read that with the amount of hours that Stranger Things got worldwide, it was 1.4 billion hours. It still did not beat Squid Game. And so
Really?
Squid Game in total, the season was 8 hours, right, of viewing. And Stranger Things was 13 hours of viewing. And Squid Game still beat Stranger Things, coming in at like 1.7 hours viewed in the first 28 hours or 28 days that it was on Netflix. So Squid Game still the most watched TV series worldwide on Netflix.
And my data, I feel like that has to do with something about where Squid Game is just more accessible to more parts of the world, whereas Stranger Things is such an American story.
But it's been watched worldwide, so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of.
It's still okay, but it's still not shabby. 1.7 against 1.4 billion hours.
No, I mean, we're
go.
splitting hairs. Yeah.
Right.
These are like people would like numbers that people would never think of, 15 years ago as a thing that could happen.
Yeah.
When we were all getting these weird little envelopes in the mail with DVDs in them.
And my mom kept saying, Netflix, that's probably a scam. And now she's on my Netflix account.
Well, who's scamming who now?
Oh my gosh. Oh man. Anyway, what's been up?
Just been spending a lot of time at home because I only have the one job right now. And this is the first time I've only had one job that wasn't involved in a pandemic in like 10 years. So that's weird. I've been trying to embrace it. It is very confusing. Like I said, I've lost all track of day and night. I take naps in the middle of the day now for some reason because the dog and I will just lay on the bed in the sun in the late afternoon and take a little nappy poo. It's pretty great. But then because my schedule is so screwed up and I'm working, I get my 40 hours in, but it's self-directed hours, which is terrifying. I can only imagine some of my former professors and teachers thinking of Adam having self-directed time is probably not going to be a great idea. But I've been watching a lot of, same old. My Midsummer Murders rewatch is continuing, but I just Monday night, I had a migraine, so I took my medication, zonked out for a couple hours, then woke up and was wide awake. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch a show. And I binged back to back. And I had never seen either of these because it was kind of there was like this, when my kids were younger and I was working two jobs, there was like a 5-year period when I just didn't go to movies. Unless it was, a kid's movie or even like Marvel movies, that was about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so from like 2011 to 2015 or 2012 to 2016, right in there, like I missed a lot of stuff. And so I'd completely missed both Now You See Me and Now You See Me Too, which is the Magicians who are like Robin Hood, and they're like stealing, they're robbing banks but using magic and misdirection, and it's all, it's clearly not real magic, but
Mm-hmm.
it's modern magicians with like sleight of hand and technical stuff, and it's got like Jesse Eisenberg and one of Dave Franco, Woody Harrelson, Morgan Freeman, and then Mark Ruffalo. And I had never seen either one of them, so I just binged them back to back. So it was like 4.5 hours of magic movies, caper movies, and I really, really had a good time. They were really interesting. It was fun. I thought the first one was better than the second one. The
Mm-hmm.
second one, they lost Isla Fisher, which was a big, I don't know if she was pregnant at the time or if she was doing another movie, or if she just didn't like the script, but she didn't come back. They brought everybody else back though. So it had to be some other conflict was going on. And the second one was meh. It wasn't as good as the first. And they, like, the first had a twist at the end, and then they tried to do another twist and another twist. So it kind of got to the point where, like, by the end of the sequel, you're like, okay, now
You're
you're
like
just
expecting all the twists now.
yeah, like, oh, we're gonna throw, because really with the first one, like the first surprise ending, like who's really all behind it, sort of a usual suspects feel to it, was I did not see coming.
Mm-hmm.
They did such a good job, and I was like, oh, but then by the second one, I'm like, oh, okay, that, like, we can't just tell a story, we're gonna have to have a twist at the end again.
Right.
And like, oh, but sometimes when like you see the twist, then you're like, but the actions of that character throughout the movie, they're actively working against their own. That doesn't make, they're just like, oh, but really the guy you thought was the good guy is the bad guy, the bad guy is the good guy. And I was like, what is this? Just was a little bit much, but they were thoroughly enjoyable. I thought about doing them as my the A side for this week, but I am actually very excited that we're doing something a little bit different this week. So I'll save that for another time.
Yeah, we are. So now that, okay, you can go ahead and say it, because, well, actually, you start first.
Yeah. So this was this Adam's fumbled attempt at a segue. It cornered about as well as the actual segue does. So this week on A Side, B Side, we are trading roles, we are trading places, switching hats. And normally on the A Side, I talk about movies and music and books and fun things and nostalgia and that guy from that show. But this week, I'm doing the crime. No, I'm not doing crime.
Covering the crime.
I'm covering the crime. So one thing that I will say first off is, every time we've done this, and this is the second time, so not many times. So once a year, third time. Oh yeah. Wow! So 30 times. So what, once every 35 episodes or so, 30 episodes or so, I am reminded how much more work goes into the true crime side than the entertainment side. I was sitting at coffee this morning with a friend of mine, and I'm like going through all my notes and everything, and I'm like, gosh, I can't believe Brooke does this every week. Like, this is just a lot of work. And she's like, well, you do like some research. We're like, yeah, I watch a movie maybe twice. Sometimes like 3 times. It's like, that's not really the same of like compiling dates and putting together a report. And so I felt like I went back to school. My job, I had to do a different type of report this weekend, and then I put together all this stuff. So I feel like in the last week I've written like 2 papers, and I didn't want to really do that. So thank you, Brooke, for all the work that you do every week that I don't even want to do 3 times every 2 years. Or are we in the third? We've started our 3rd year.
We have started our 3rd year. Yep.
Okay. So once a year.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good average. Once a year.
Once a year, I have to put in as much work as you put in 51 times a year. Totally equal. Totally. All right. So for this week on the A side, we're talking true crime. And Brooke, do you remember the old saying, fool me once, shame on thee, fool me twice, shame on me?
Mm-hmm.
That was also the famous George Bush quote, where he said, fool me once, shame on you.
Fool me, can't get fooled again.
You can't get fooled again. can't get fooled 2 times. And I I know I'm one of the few people on earth, but I have like a soft spot for George W. Bush. So I'm not sure why.
You and
But
Michelle Obama.
yeah. See, I'm in good company. I'm in good company. I wish I could have one of his paintings. I would put one of his paintings up in my apartment. I mean, bucket list stuff. Everyone's like, oh, what would you do if you won a Mega Millions? So like, you got $1.5 billion. I'd be like, I'd buy a DeLorean and a George W. Bush painting.
There you go. And that would be all your money.
It'd be pretty much all the money. It's like $1 billion for a DeLorean, $500 million for the painting. Got to go back to work. So keep that in mind as we're going through the fool me once, shame on thee, fool me twice, shame on me.
Okay.
Also more commonly known as fool me once, shame on you. But I like thee because it feels very Shakespearean and it rhymes, and it's the original way it was done. So today we are going to talk about the case of Marceline Harvey, or also known as Harvey Marceline. It's the same person, but two different names, two different personas, and a crime span that I think may set a record for A-side, B-side, from first murder to last murder, of nearly 70 years.
Wow.
In their early days, Harvey Marceline was charged as a man. However, now Marceline Harvey, as they are now known, is 83 and is identified as a transgender woman since they were out of jail in 2019. Because of that confusion or that change, looking at all the different stories spanning that 70 years, there's a lot of different pronouns used. So for clarity for the rest of this side, I will do my best to refer to them as Marceline during the entire segment. And also they and them, just so we're on the same point, because older articles say he, new articles say she. So I figured we just, kind of go gender neutral so we can keep things clear.
Alrighty.
Harvey Marcelin was born in 1938 and raised in New York City. Their mom was a see, I made it 5 words. Their mom was a seamstress, and their father actually passed away when they were 10, was a shipping clerk. So they grew up most of their lives with a single mom. Their parents grew up in Harlem, but later moved to Washington Heights. And Marceline spent all of their youth in New York City. And as a teenager, they displayed a propensity for violence, and it was particularly often aimed at women. And even back then, they had a relatively complicated gender identity. In fact, Marceline recently told the New York Post in an interview that they first experimented with cross-dressing when they were 13 or 14. So it was something they were struggling with at a very early age. Also, about the age of 14 in 1952, according to court records that have been sealed and parole board minutes, things that have been mentioned in various parole hearings, Marceline was treated at Catholic charities, which paired clergy and lay people with troubled children. And that was because at that time, they had been accused as a 14-year-old of an attempted rape of an 8-year-old. So we've already seen very early trauma, some early on issues with violence and behavior. So it, forecasts for the future. As a young adult, Marceline was described at the time as a tall, slender man. They lived with their mother and earned about $75 a week operating copy machines, which probably sounds very weird to anyone under the age of 25, that you would just get paid to be a copy machine person. But there used to be entire stores where they just made copies. I know it's not something you see very often. And in about 11 years later, so they are now in their mid-20s, in 1963, Marceline was accused of raping their girlfriend at the time, Jacqueline Bonds. At the time, he was reportedly drinking often, taking cocaine. He was regularly assaulting Miss Bonds, and they themselves were in and out of psychiatric care. The accusation of rape from Jacqueline Bonds actually then starts the ball rolling to an even more aggressive pattern of violence. So in April of 1963, shortly before Marceline was supposed to appear before a grand jury on the rape charges, he shot and killed Jacqueline Bonds in their Manhattan apartment. The
Wow.
police reported that Marceline chased her as they staggered through the kitchen and the living room and shot her twice more before they collapsed. So shot her, chased her, shot her again. This led to some understandably psychiatric examination by doctors at Bellevue Hospital. In 1963, they concluded that Marceline had schizoid personality with psychopathic features, but was not deemed criminally insane nor psychotic. And in fact, a hospital record from the year before, in 1962, indicated that Marceline might have delusional grandiosity and suggestions of chronic schizophrenia and paranoid reaction personality. So this is the first time when people start to mention that there may be more than one personality involved in this person. But at that time, still referred to as Harvey Marceline, and then was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. So you'd think, okay, case is done.
Mm-hmm.
Caught, tried, in prison for life.
Case
We
closed.
should be done. Case closed. Very boring A-side. However, during the next 2 decades behind bars, Marceline repeatedly appealed their conviction in both state and federal courts, and then, after exhausting all of those appeals, would routinely attempt to persuade the parole board to give them parole and free them, even though they were, sentenced to life in prison. Even while in prison, the officials were skeptical about the actions and motivations and the rehabilitation of Marceline. They reportedly brought up the aggression towards women that had happened. He had sent inappropriate letters to Candy Stripe hospital volunteers who had visited the hospitals. But in spite of those officials who were skeptical and allegations of inappropriate conduct, somehow in 1984, even though they had been sentenced to life in prison, Henry Marcelin, or as we were calling them today, Marceline, was released and paroled.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, those
Our
skeptics,
justice system at work.
yes, those skeptics were proven to be right, because a little over a year later, on October 30th of 1985, a gentleman named Robert Romano was in the lobby of the Cambridge Residence Hotel in Harlem. And this is where Robert Romano lived. And the police interviewed him, and he, being evidently either super honest or still high, told the police that he was sitting outside smoking reefer, and a tenant of room 602 passed by pushing a shopping cart with a giant garbage bag in it. And Romanos told the police, after he admitted to smoking reefer, which probably didn't help his case in any way, shape, or form, he said, "The bag ripped on the first step and blood came out." Hours later, a different man was walking on Manhattan's Upper West Side and saw a dark plastic bag at the entrance to Central Park at 106th Street. And there was blood dripping out of the bag. So I don't know if this would be my first reaction, Brooke, that you tell me this is what you would do. His first reaction was to tear it open.
No,
right? Who does that? Who's like, oh, hey, look, there's a garbage bag. It appears to be bleeding. I should check on the garbage bag. Maybe it needs a suture. He ripped it open, and of course, in the bag was a pair of legs that were bound. Police investigated, and they identified the victim as Ana Laura Sierra, and who had their own police record already. They had been stabbed repeatedly, tied up with rope, and wrapped in plastic. The 29-year-old had a known heroin habit, and according to the parole board reports, and had also been arrested for prostitution several times. Police noted that in these, previous court records, an address kept popping back up. And that address was room 602 at the Cambridge Residence Hotel, the room that belonged to Marceline. Marceline told police that Sierra had sold his flute to buy drugs, which is a real sentence. Evidently, the man's flute was stolen, and then she sold it to buy drugs. But I did not see a flute coming into play. Then again, it was the early 80s. Yacht rock was still big. Maybe he was, sort of the flutist, like, the anchor man. Marceline was charged again with first-degree murder. But of course, struck a plea bargain and pled guilty to first-degree manslaughter. The police said that she was stabbed over 30 times, but Marceline said that that was probably incorrect because she'd been left outside in the park, and those were probably, some of those, punctures were probably made by, varmints and rats and things.
Because they carry knives. I mean, it's New York,
absolutely. I mean, it's New York. I mean, I'm assuming. And we've all seen that giant, rat with the pizza.
Exactly.
It wouldn't shock me if they're just running around with knives as well. So in spite of that assertion, after the trial, Marceline was returned to prison in 1986. So now we've got 2 murders and we're back in jail with life. This should be the end, but again, it is not. For the next 35 years and across 15 different parole hearings, the parole officials repeatedly denied Marceline freedom. But as Marceline entered their 9th decade and just, closing in, having turned 80 and about to turn 81 in June of 2019, they appeared by video before a 2-commissioner panel with 2 commissioners, one Otis Cruz and the other Joseph Krengle. Mr. Cruz, who was a former parole officer who joined the board just 4 years earlier in 2015, noted Marceline's lengthy history of wrongdoing. Marceline, however, countered that they had no family to guide them and that drug and alcohol abuse contributed to their actions. Mr. Cruz then would go on to say, many of those who we speak to lack the guidance that they wish they would have had in their youth, but very few of them have replicated a criminal history that's as graphic as yours. So that would seem to be pretty open and shut case. They realize this guy is a consistent danger, and they are not going to release them back into polite society, even though they're a kindly looking 81-year-old at this point. However, the commissioners noted that internal assessments indicated a low risk for felony violence or arrest, which is a weird way to say, like, they didn't say no violence or arrest. We just didn't think it would be felony because, it's a little old person.
Right.
What are they gonna do? Marceline then told the board, I give you my word, I will never reoffend.
Oh, right. Yeah, because we believe you. After all of this, we believe you.
Evidently, the parole board did. Because on 7th of 2019, they approved Marceline's release and they left prison and reported to their parole officer. After they left jail, this is when they began identifying as a transgender woman, and because of this, in New York City, was placed in a women's homeless shelter.
Oh my!
In accordance with the New York City Department of Social Services policy.
That's nothing against transgender women. That's everything against Marceline, who's an absolute lunatic.
Right. In December of 2019, Marceline, who now has a Facebook page, probably a little bit late on the bandwagon, having been, incarcerated for most of the last, for 35 years, but has a Facebook page that has a caption on a picture that says love personified. It was a picture of Susan Layden. Susan Layden was born in 1953, so quite a bit younger than our Marceline. Spent most of her life in northern New Jersey. She was a divorced mother of 1 daughter and had run her own jewelry business.
Easy for you to say.
Word. So, jewelry business. She sold jewelry for years. However, that business had failed. She'd gone through a divorce and was looking to kind of change her life. So she decided about a decade before that, so in like 2009, 2010, to move to New York City, looking to live closer to friends and also be able to move around more easily with public transit and that sort of thing. I can totally understand the urge to just decide to change your life and move into the city, because I've done that myself, and I can totally see myself just randomly moving to New York at some point. When she moved to New York, first she lived in Queens, and then later moved to Brooklyn, and then they were in a supportive housing community for seniors in an area called Fort Greene. Now, according to police and the news reports that I was able to find, it is unclear where Marceline and Susan Layden cross paths for the first time. However, they did have clearly a relationship of some kind. By the time that Marceline made his post about love personified, Miss Layden and Marceline were both seeking placement in city shelters. So they may have crossed paths somewhere there, probably in the Bronx. Marceline at the time, after they were paroled, still presented as a mild-spoken, tall black man, according to Anne Brennan, a nurse practitioner who ran the intake at one of the shelters. And according to Miss Brennan, she said, "Well, why are you at the women's shelter?" Miss Brennan told Marceline that placing them in a women's shelter seemed like a bad idea, given their history of killing women. Mm-hmm. But despite her objections, Miss Brennan said her supervisors allowed for Marceline to stay at the women's shelter. Julia Saville, a spokeswoman for the New York City Department of Social Services, says that all the rules were followed. Our policy, in accordance with the law, is to place individuals in shelters based on their reported gender identity. Being homeless or transgender does not make you inherently violent and are not connected to the crime that was committed. So the city's kind of saying, hey, we didn't do anything wrong. This isn't our fault. We covered all our bases. Marceline continued to post about Susan Layden on their social media pages. However, Miss Layden's friends never met Marceline, and they say that Miss Layden never discussed Marceline at all. So that's a little bit of a red flag to me. But somebody, like if you've got that one friend who's posting like couples pictures and the other one isn't posting the couples pictures,
exactly.
There's some cringe going on. It's not great. This went on for about 3 years, from 2019 into earlier this year in February of 2022. On February 27th, according to the police, there is video that shows Miss Layden entering Marceline's building in East New York. This is the last time that Susan Layden is seen alive.
Wait a minute, 83 years old?
83 years old. On March 3rd, 2020, so about 4 or 5 days later, 2.5 years after Marceline had posted that first photo of Miss Layden, the New York Police Department got a grisly 911 call. And tell me if any of this sounds familiar. There was a shopping cart outside a pawn shop in a mostly industrial section of New York, inside a plastic bag containing a woman's torso.
Oh my gosh.
The police would determine that that was Miss Layden's. The suspect, Marceline, was arrested just the very next day, the day after the torso was discovered, and was held on without bail, understandably, at Rikers Island, which if you've watched Law and Order, you know that is not a place you mess around with. 3 days after that arrest, on March 7th, what is believed to be one of Miss Layden's legs was found in trash on Jamaica Avenue. And as if that wasn't awful enough, the way that the police found out about the leg is a little bit ridiculously hard to believe. Police say that Marceline was captured on video riding a motorized scooter, because remember, 83 years old, not an imposing figure, is riding around on a motorized scooter, shopping.
With the leg?
Sitting on the leg on his chair, on their chair. They shared the video back in March. You can see the leg underneath them on the motorized scooter. I'm sure anybody who went by was like, "Oh, what is this, like a Halloween prank or something?" Because it's so out of the realm of possibility that someone would be shopping with a dismembered limb hanging out in their cart. In March, the police then executed a search warrant on Marceline's apartment, which unfortunately turned up a human head. This was also found with blades for a saw, but they did not find a saw that was reported. Then at the end of March 30th of this year, 2020, Harvey Marceline, or Marceline Harvey, or Henry, depending on how they are written about, pled not guilty when they were arraigned. Marceline's attorney, Andrew Friedman, entered the plea on his client's behalf during the brief hearing because, could not get out of Rikers Island. He said, "My client maintains her innocence." Marceline appeared in an orange prison garb and long sleeve jacket with their hands handcuffed behind them and did not speak during the proceedings. They were charged with charges of first degree and second degree murder, tampering with evidence, and a new charge that I did not realize was a thing, but I'm kind of really glad is a thing, concealment of a human corpse, which is a crime.
Goodness gracious. How
Which,
in the world is someone that's 83 able to do all of this?
right, kills the lady, chops her up, and then goes shopping with the leg. I mean, it would be like more of a punchline if it was an arm and she could say, "I just needed a hand with shopping."
Oh,
I'm sorry, but it was a leg, so it wasn't. So Marceline did not speak at their arraignment. However, in April, they conducted a jailhouse interview with the New York Post, and there are some doozies. First, they talked about their two personalities, saying, "Harvey's not a good guy, he's a tough guy. Marceline's nice and gentle and loving. You know, lots of laughter, fun to be with. She's the one who's perfectly normal." Marceline would be the one who tries to keep Harvey in check. In the 55-minute jailhouse interview, Marceline said they're in touch with both their masculine and feminine sides, but the male persona is the one that gets them in trouble. Marceline wore a wig and lipstick after their most recent release from prison, but the state has them in a men's unit in Rikers, which I think is probably a really good idea. Of the two identities, Marceline says that they prefer Marceline and laughs when asked about Harvey. And this is the strangest paragraph out of the entire interview and also doesn't seem remotely unbelievable. Marceline said, "He's a pimp. You like him, don't you?" Marceline then suggested to the Post reporter that they go on a date to Anton's wine bar downtown as soon as they beat their current charges.
Oh.
This person is 83 years old, has murdered 3 women, and still has the gall to ask the reporter out on a date.
Of course.
And I know that this is a transgender person, but men are awful.
Mm-hmm.
Just putting it out there. Marceline admitted to the Post that they did kill their 2 previous girlfriends, but insisted they did not chop the head and limbs off of Layden in February as charged, even though the police have that video of him shopping with the leg.
Her leg, right?
Yeah. Marceline then broke out the classic, defense: "I'm being framed because of my rap sheet." So it turns out that Layden was actually one of 3 women who occasionally crashed at Marceline's East New York apartment. One of the 3, Jillian, is cooperating with police, and the other one, who is not mentioned or not named in this article, and I could not find their name, is the one that Marceline claims is the actual murderer, saying that she was jealous of Susan. So Marceline is now trying both the "I was framed and it was somebody else" defense. I'm sure that they will appeal every one of these until they're dying.
The reason for the leg, that was a frame job as well. I didn't know that I was sitting on a human leg.
Yeah, I thought it was lumbar support. So Marceline's next court date was April 19th of this year. However, I could find no details about that court date or any notice of it being postponed, even looking through trying to find court records, that sort of thing. So I'm not sure if it happened or if it was postponed. I have set up a new Google News alert because this is an active story, and as soon as we get a little bit of information of maybe them being committed or actually going to trial, we will update you on future episodes of the A Side B Side. Hopefully, after all of this, after 2 incredibly egregious mistakes that directly led to the murders of 2 more women after they had already been sentenced to life in prison, the justice system will figure out that this is not someone they should ever consider paroling, even if they live another 35 years and they look like they're just so old and frail that they wouldn't be a felony danger to anyone. And that is the story of Marceline.
Wow. That is, wow. Good job, Adam.
Thank you. like I said, there's a lot of work that goes into all these dates and numbers and times. And I think at one point I said Henry, not Harvey, because it's going too fast. But it's Harvey Marcelin or Marceline Harvey is the full name. So apologize for that slip of the tongue. And I wanted to find one that would, like, when we talked about doing this, I was like, oh, I'm gonna find a story that has like a definitive ending. And then I found this one, and it was just too crazy not to talk about. But now I gotta go to sleep knowing that Marceline is still out there.
Yeah, but Marceline's in Rikers, so
yeah, on the men's section, hopefully never getting that.
Yeah, man, that was intense. That was good job. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
So that's the A side this week.
That is the A side. Next week we return to fun stuff.
Well, speaking of fun stuff, I got to do the fun stuff. I got to be Adam this week for the B side. So actually the swap,
minutes and minutes of preparation.
Yes, the swap was actually my suggestion. And it's really funny because I was like, hey, we should, switch things up this week. And then a very unenthusiastic Adam was like, I guess. And so I prepared because I was like, okay, well, because the movie that made me want to swap, well, when Adam was like, I guess, I started looking more into it, and there was like a true crime aspect to it. So I was like, oh, well, I guess I can't even do it. Or I was like, well, at first I was like, well, I don't think he wants to swap. So I can still do my movie and it's got this true crime aspect. And then you were like, okay, I found a true crime story. And I was like, well, darn it. Now I've got to find another movie. So it takes me down this rabbit hole. And I'm like, so back in Bowling Green, there's a couple of guys. When the pandemic first started and I was still in Bowling Green, we would do Zoom movie nights. And we had actually, it was like perfect timing because we had already planned to do a Zoom movie night, and we were like submitting movies like, hey, what do you want to watch? What do you want to watch? And my submission is a movie that I have loved since I was a kid. It came out in the 80s. It's a cult classic. It was a financial success, but it was not very critically well received.
Critics don't like movies that make money.
Well, it did make money. It made $25 million in 1985 when it was released, which today would be like 67 million. So that's not bad.
That's not to laugh at.
But it just brought me back, like, and just the other day, it was like the 35-year anniversary of Lost Boys, and like with Stranger Things, it's just got me in this like 80s vibe. And that's why I ended up finding or thinking about this movie again. And that movie is The Last Dragon.
Ooh, I do not know this movie at all.
Oh my gosh. So it is a Berry Gordy film. If you don't know Berry Gordy is a music producer. So yes, there is lots of great music in this film because of course Berry Gordy is going to highlight as many of his artists as possible. You've probably heard of the group LMFAO. Well, that's like his son and his nephew. Berry Gordy's son and nephew in that group. Just to give you a little insight. So The Last Dragon is set in New York City. And the star of the show, the movie, is Leroy Green, also known as Bruce Leroy, who has dreams of becoming like the greatest martial artist of all time, like Bruce Lee. And he's on a quest to receive or to reach the final level of like concentration of greatness where you embody the glow. Well, in the midst of this, trying to become the world's best martial artist and to receive the glow, several things happen. He ends up with a love interest who was Vanity, who was played by Vanity. She plays Laura Charles. And if you don't know, Vanity was a big time artist in the 80s who was one of Prince's proteges. And also some really wild cameos in this film after like rewatching it. First of all, William H. Macy has a very small role, and he's known as W.H. Macy in this film. William H. Macy, of course, best known as Frank Gallagher from Shameless.
Also Fargo.
And Fargo, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm in Minnesota. I can't not mention Fargo.
You're right. Another guest cameo or whatever is Chaz Palminteri, who's known for several like mobster films. The Bronx Tale is one of my favorites. Also, Making an appearance is Keisha Knight Pulliam, aka Rudy Huxtable from The Cosby Show.
Oh wow.
And the star of this movie, his name is simply Timac. And Timac was born June 27th, 1964, to an Italian American mom and African American dad. The other day we talked on my show, we talked about first celebrity crushes, and I was like, oh yeah, Michael Keaton and Jason Patric, Batman and Jason Patric from the Lost Boys. And then I was like, oh my gosh, wait a minute, no, it would be Timac from The Last Dragon. And I wasn't even 10 years old yet, but I remember going, like, looking at him thinking, he's so cute. And like you get the warm and fuzzies, and you're like, oh, he's so cute. Yeah. So
I mean, and like he was pretty young at the time too. So it wasn't like it was like that far out of your age range.
Right. I think he was only like 19 at the time. So yeah. I mean, not old at all. He also made an appearance in Janet Jackson's Let's Wait a While music video. He is in real life a very accomplished martial artist. He's got a black belts in Goju Ryu karate, Jeet Kune Do, Wing Chun, Hapkido, Jiu-Jitsu, Taekwondo, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So he's not like messing around here with his.
No, he's got skills. the whole knife set there.
Right. Well, on top of Timac and Bruce Leroy and Laura Charles's, little developing love story, for every hero, there has to be a villain. And this is probably one of my favorite movie villains of all time. Unfortunately, he has passed away in real life, but Julius Carry is known as Sho'nuff, or the Shogun of Harlem. And
it's Bowler.
He's got a phrase like, who's the baddest? And everybody has to yell, Sho'nuff, and so he is like the baddest martial artist in town. But he hears about Bruce Leroy, and it's like a knock to his ego, because it's like, nobody can be better than me. And of course, the movie is the battle between Bruce Leroy and Sho'nuff. And well, I don't want to give it away, even though it's like a 40-year-old movie, but still.
Yeah.
So not quite 40, but
Julius Carry was in one of my favorite TV shows of all time, Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. as like the sidekick to Bruce Campbell.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's still crazy.
So when The Last Dragon was being made, Vanity had just finished Purple Rain. She had just left Purple Rain, and Berry Gordy had signed her to another 4-picture contract. Last Dragon began production in April of 1984, and it was the very first role ever for Timac. When you watch the movie, you'll get some very serious Karate Kid vibes. You'll get some, you'll feel like a little Cyndi Lauper vibe. You feel some like Grease vibes. I mean, there's all kind of vibes in it. Plus, there's several scenes of like Bruce Lee and Enter the Dragon that are like interspersed in the movie as well. Of course, with Berry Gordy being a great producer, the soundtrack is phenomenal. You've got stuff written by DeBarge, Diane, of course, DeBarge, Rhythm of the Night, which was written by Diane Warren. Stevie Wonder makes the soundtrack. I mean, you've got a bunch of great songs on there. Like I said, the reception critically was not great, but it is considered a cult classic. It's been referenced in pop culture quite a bit, actually. So in the TV show Insecure, which is Issa Rae's TV show, season 3 of Insecure, Molly surprises Issa by taking her to an outdoor screening of The Last Dragon, which, OMG, that's a best friend right there. The song that I mentioned, LMFAO, they have their song Sexy and I Know It, and they have a verse that say, and like Bruce Leroy, I got the glow, which is a reference to the higher status that Bruce Leroy was trying to, and spoiler alert, eventually achieves the glow. The film from 2018, Sorry to Bother You, that features Tessa Thompson and oh goodness, now I can't think of his name. He was also in Get Out. Great actor. Anyway, Tessa Thompson's character, excuse me, she reenacts the dialogue from part of the movie as part of her performance piece. Um, Busta Rhymes dresses, which is really funny because when you watch Lakeith Stanfield is also in Sorry to Bother You, but Busta Rhymes, when you like look at the character Sho'nuff, he kind of gives you a Busta Rhymes vibe, and he actually dresses as Sho'nuff in his music video for the 1997 song Dangerous.
Oh, nice.
Um there is a UFC mixed martial artist whose name is Alex Caceres, who chose the nickname Bruce Leroy to pay homage to the movie and the lead character. Disney, I think this is a Disney film, Raya and the Last Dragon.
Yeah.
Okay, so in 2021, Raya and the Last Dragon, Sisu, the title dragon character, declares that she has the glow, which is an homage to the glow that Bruce Leroy receives. And in Bed-Stuy, or Bedford-Stuyvesant section of Brooklyn, there is a pizzeria named Daddy Green's, which pays homage to the main character's parents' pizza shop. And it's directed your pizza to Daddy's Green's Pizza, is what they say in the movie. But yeah, that is one of my favorite movies. If you get a chance, it is on HBO Max, and you absolutely should watch it. Like I said, watched it last night and it still holds up, and the group had never seen it before, and all of them were like, okay, man, that was a great movie. It's amazing. It does not take itself seriously, which is, it never did, and that's part of the charm of the movie. Again, it'll remind you of, like, you'll be looking at it like, oh my God, that 80s hair, like that's what's wrong with the ozone, all that hairspray and the outfits and the music. And it's just, it does really take you back in time. And it's just a great, fun watch.
I will definitely have to watch this.
So again, you can check it out on HBO Max. If you'd like a full like plot rundown before you get into it, you can check it out on Wikipedia or Rotten Tomatoes, but I highly recommend it. It's just one of those, you're going to sit on the couch, and when you're done, you're just going to be like, yep, all right, I feel pretty good. Life's all right.
It also had a very young Ernie Reyes Jr. in it, evidently. He was one of my favorite, like, he was in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. He was in Surf Ninjas, which is a highly ridiculous movie that I love.
Yes.
Oh, so good. And as we were mentioning earlier, Barry Gordy, if like you need another touch point in Back to Future, when Marvin is calling his uncle or his cousin, when Marty McFly is playing the guitar, he says, it's your cousin Marvin. Know that new sound you've been looking for? Well, listen to this. And he's on the other end of the line. So it's uncredited cameo in Back to the Future as well.
Ernie actually is a very cute, like in this movie, he's like adorable little kid, but he kicks butt. So yeah, absolutely highly recommend. And I don't know if I did it justice, but that's my B-side.
And I love that you found something that I've never seen, because what the heck?
I thought
not only never seen, I've never even heard of this.
But you're gonna like, there's a scene where they're like actually in the pizza shop, and we were like, how much did pizza cost back then? How much was a pizza? Like, you're just like so into like all parts of the movie. Like you're watching the movie, but like so much in the background, like you're looking at the taxis, and you're like, it just really takes you back. It's very nostalgic.
Like you said, like almost 40 years ago at this point. It's a lot changed for you. Like when I was a kid, if I thought about 40, like if I was, 1994, I'm like, man, 40 years ago was the Korean War, 1954. I mean, no color TV.
Oh my God. But yeah. But there you go. How'd I do, Adam?
I found that very enjoyable. I think you did a great job, and I now have something that I can download and watch later tonight. So I found it very fulfilling. I think you did a great job.
Thank you. But there you go. That is.
But next week we're switching back.
Yes, next week we are switching back, and next week I'll do the original movie that I intended for this week that I found out had a true crime related to it, and I was like, well, I can't do that now.
That's interesting. Like I it's funny. I didn't realize, like, I started watching Blackbird. Just speaking of true crime, I didn't realize that it wasn't a scripted show at first. Like it's a scripted show, but it's based on a true story.
Yes. Yes.
I had no idea. And so now, because I don't want to spoil the episode that comes out on Friday each week, like I'm avoiding anything about the show because I don't want them to mention the case, or like, because they've done such a good job of making it a mystery. Here we are in like one episode left, and I have no idea how they're going to do this, or what's going to happen, or how Jimmy's going to get out of this, because he's in bad shape.
He's in bad shape.
So I'm like, I know I could find out, but I don't want to ruin it. So
yeah,
it's tough when there's that connection to the reality.
Well, there you go. That is episode 104. Adam, you know the deal.
Yes. Thank you so much for listening. And if you'd like to hear more of our episodes, any of the 100 and some before this, or any of the 100 and some to come, make sure you subscribe. You can go to our website, asidebsidepodcast.square.site. On there, you can get a link to any of your favorite streaming services where you can follow us, subscribe, download, like, share. That would be awesome. We would love that. Also, would love some feedback. We love hearing your thoughts about these stories, about the entertainment that we talk about, the memories that you have. I now have a new life goal because I want to get the glow. But not Soul Glow, because that was coming to America. I don't want Soul Glow.
That was coming to America, right?
Yeah,
right.
I want the glow. So if you want the glow, one of the best ways to do that is to buy merchandise for our website, because it will make you look really awesome. You'll be like, man, they're glowing. Look at that, bad vibes, save life t-shirt, hoodie. So check those out. You can buy Brooke some coffee at buyusacoffee.com, A-Side, B-Side podcast. And of course, please like, share, tell random strangers. I think if each of you today goes out and stops a random stranger on the street and says, listen to this podcast, we'll get at least 2 more listeners next week. So that would be great.
I have to say, it's so funny because one of my closest friends listens, and her fiance listens as well. And like, he'll ask her, did you know that she was going to talk about that? Did you know that was going to happen? So I think he's more into the podcast than she is. And of course, I love her absolutely. And she listens, but I think he actually listens like the day it comes out. So I wanted to give Brian a shout out and say, thank you, Brian, for being such a big fan of the podcast. And love you, love Jordan, love Wyatt. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you very much.
There you go. All right. We'll be back at it again next week. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Brooke.